Welcome to the 2023 GRESP Global Results Events for Real Estate. I'm Chris Pike, the Chief Innovation Officer for GRESP. During this event, we will reflect on the state of the industry with perspectives from leaders around the world. We'll learn about a new roadmap released by the GRESP Foundation, and we'll review the achievements of GRESP participants reported in 2023. These insights represent just a small fraction of the information available from the 2023 GRESP assessments. Explore the full results on GRESP.com. Throughout the event, the GRESP team is available to answer questions in real time using the chat. Even better, you can join us for one of 3 in-person regional insight events and where you can interact with your peers and get questions answered. You can find dates and registration information available on GRESP.com. Let's get going. There's an old saying, may you live in interesting times, and 2023 certainly qualifies. Let's reflect on a few things that make 2023 unique. First and foremost, there are more people sharing this planet than ever before. In 2023, we reached 8 billion people. Those people have more wealth collectively than at any time in human history, over 105 trillion USD. And that wealth is less equitably distributed than any time before, where we have 10% of the world's population claiming 76% of the wealth. Those demographic circumstances set the stage for environmental impacts. This year, we have a greater concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere than at any time in the last 10,000 years. We understand that carbon is driving higher temperatures. Many places around the world have seen temperatures 1.5 degrees Celsius above their pre-industrial baseline. And those higher temperatures have visible effects. Antarctic sea ice shrinking to unprecedented lows. Fortunately, it's not all doom and gloom. 2023 also saw a period of increased and a continuing investment in sustainability. $2.8 trillion invested in sustainable assets this year. Of those, a large fraction accelerating the transition into clean energy, where we saw a 31% jump in year-over-year investment flows. And those investments are yielding records on the ground. We see more wind generation, more battery charging, and more solar generation around the world. The unprecedented events of 2023 mean that sustainability has never been more important. And we are facing new considerations. We understand that in 2023, there is no way to achieve our Paris goals without buildings. We know that our actions and our activities has never been under more scrutiny, and there has never been more potential for real estate to deliver benefits for people and the environment. That said, let's start the program by hearing from Davina Rooney, CEO of the Green Building Council of Australia.
Hi, I'm Davina Rooney, the Chief Executive Officer of the Green Building Council of Australia and the Deputy Chair of the World Green Building Council. I'm incredibly excited to be in this moment while we're leaning into what I'm calling the disorderly decade. Why? Because the best time to deal with climate change was about 30 years ago, but we're doing it all right now. What does that feel like? That feels like I'm sitting with my 12-year-old doing his term project that we were meant to do really steadily, but suddenly we're doing it all on the last night, not in the right order. And we're seeing that in the built environment right now. We're seeing leading standards suddenly fall behind regulations. We're seeing strong investor demand. We're seeing this everywhere, all at once, all at the same time. However, we need to lean into this moment because the world is listening and the time for change is absolutely now. I'm very excited to partner with GRESB in this moment because there's the chance of taking the alphabet soup and working with GRESB to work out what the ABC of that alphabet soup is, and take this decade, work together to squeeze out every moment and drive the decarbonisation and broader sustainability agenda that's fundamental in this moment. I want to work together to design and partner on better operational and new buildings today so that we're in a better place for tomorrow.
Thank you, Davina. That was great. Let's learn more about the state of the industry from Daryl Neat from the Real Property Association of Canada and Jessica Long from NAREIT. Hi, guys.
Hi, Chris.
and
Thanks for having us.
Excellent. It's a treat to talk with you guys. So we want to enter this section with a couple of questions for you guys. You guys see a lot of people dealing with a lot of issues. And so the first question, I want to direct it to Daryl to get us started. And so what issues do you see shaping the real estate industry with respect to ESG and sustainability in 2023? What matters to your Canadian members and the marketplace that they are serving?
All right, thanks, Chris, and happy to be here and with you all today. So on market conditions, I think we all know it's pretty tough right now. We're seeing declining NOI and valuations, increased financing costs, less available capital. Some asset classes and regions obviously harder hit than others, but these are disruptive forces, and I think this is really the elephant in the room and shaping a lot of what's happening today. The results, short-term, direct financial pressure on companies. Climate risk, as we know, is more of a longer term, mostly indirect pressure that companies are feeling as well. So when push comes to shove between these two things, there's a lot of pressure on ESG projects and programs. And I think now it's about value and returns more than ever. I mean, it always has been, but I think it's really value and returns, and a really strong financial lens is required. Second point on net zero carbon, I'll break this down into two chunks. Firstly, for leaders and then for everyone else. In Canada, roughly a third of our member companies have set net zero carbon targets. And for them, I think they're really moved past the what to do, what commitments should we make? How do we count carbon within our company? And I think they're clearly focused on the how, much more focused on the how. And I think they're interested in what the SEC and CSA are doing around mandatory ESG disclosures and Scope 3 emissions in particular, but they're a little bit further down the track, and they're getting on with executing against their target. So, I think in these companies, asset managers are thinking about how to make decisions around large investments in the context of net zero, fuel switching, building envelope upgrades. Investment professionals are thinking about how to make acquisition and disposition decisions with a net zero lens. Development teams are thinking about how to build differently to achieve net zero. And I think HR professionals are also thinking about how to integrate net zero targets into compensation programs. Moving on to everyone else. So the other 2/3 that don't have a carbon target yet, what is in and what is out? They're thinking more about how do we set targets? They're taking first steps to get started. I think this group of companies are paying a little bit more close attention to the SEC and CSA because I think they're a little bit more guided and persuaded by regulatory pressure. And so they're also not as far down the field. So they're looking at, where do these things land to help inform and guide their actions as well.
Awesome, Daryl. That's really a compelling, and I think one just reflection on your remarks is saying it's such a compelling and important observation that as we are shifting the market toward higher performance, we're also stretching it and differentiating. There's a different set of things going on with that top third, and then the 2/3 that are still getting into this cycle. That's a really important observation, one that I think a lot of folks participating might be able to relate to. Jessica, let's go south and get that perspective from the NAREIT community. How does the market in 2023 look to you and to your stakeholders?
Yeah, I think that I love Daryl's answer. I think within the real estate industry, we're really seeing that shift in the way that ESG climate issues are being managed within real estate companies and within the industry. I think that one of the things that is really shaping what we're seeing and why we see this huge movement within the industry is because of that global focus on climate and really building decarbonization being at the top of most regional agendas. As most of the sustainability community that's listening is well aware, buildings make up almost 40% of global emissions. But it's also widely understood that the built environment is a crucial part of our society. All the places where we live our lives, where we eat, sleep, work, enjoy company of others, shop, receive medical care, anything you do, you're likely doing it in a building or in the built environment. and all sectors of the economy really have some sort of connection to physical real estate. So it makes sense that as governments are looking to reduce carbon from cities, states, and countries, and investors want to decarbonize their investment portfolios, that focusing on buildings would be a crucial part and a really important part to get right and get going on right away. And we're lucky there. One of the key takeaways that I kind of wrote down from the ESG workshop at GRESB was without buildings, there is no Paris Agreement. There is no way to achieve a 1.5 degree world without decarbonization of buildings. And so I think it's really understood that it's our responsibility to continue to move this forward and to focus on it. But the silver lining and the really exciting part is another reason why buildings are at the forefront of climate action, locally, globally, within investment portfolios, is because we know the formula. The real estate community has been focused on this for over 20 years, building sustainable buildings, figuring out how to design, develop, retrofit, finance energy efficient low buildings. We have the tools. And we know what to do. So we really need to just at this point focus on building owners, lenders, other capital providers to work together with designers, engineers, building trades and building management teams to move forward with decarbonization and really get the job done and get it moving. And the great other kind of great news about this is we know now that this doesn't have to be a cost, that you can create value in decarbonizing buildings and making them run more efficiently, making them more appealing to tenants, investors. So that's really exciting. The other thing is that 2023 and in recent years in general, we've really seen that the physical impacts of climate change are already being felt. So we just finished up another summer where we saw the hottest temperatures on record, and we just found out that September was the hottest on record by potentially a half a degree. I think that they're still finalizing the numbers, but half a degree Celsius, which really is stunning a lot of folks. Catastrophic flooding and wildfires are becoming the norm in a lot of areas around the world. And we're not just seeing those that are directly impacted suffer. We're also seeing things like the smoke from the Canadian wildfires reaching New York City at the end of June. NAREIT was having our annual REIT Week conference, and the skies were dark, and it was really impactful to see folks, putting on masks again to go outside instead of inside this time. So we really have to, while we focus on decarbonization, we have no choice to also focus on climate adaptation. So adapting to a 1.5 degree world while we're also trying to prevent things from getting even worse in a 2, 3, 4 degree scenario.
Jessica, I love that. And just to paraphrase one piece you said, which really sticks with me as well, and you said it very clearly, without buildings, there's no Paris. We know the formula for making better buildings. And the good news is it's entirely compatible with real estate as a business. Sustainable buildings are better buildings, better assets. And getting that word out and showing that we are shovel ready and, ready to go is really compelling. I love that. I love that twist on it. And boy, that orange sky in New York was very, very visceral, right? And so let's you guys have given us a nice snapshot of 2023. Let's close this out by looking to 2024. What do you expect? Let's start back with Daryl for a second and say, from a RealPAC perspective, from your perspective, what do you see as increasingly important? What do you expect the industry to be focused on as we go into 2024?
On the net zero carbon, I think this is a core focus for next year. I think this is a core focus for the next 20 years. For leaders, I think it's still continuing to lean into how to get it done. There's still so much to be done. Asset managers, investment professionals, development teams, HR professionals, sustainability teams, supporting all of them. Net zero carbon is a team sport, and there's a lot of work to be done, and it really needs to be integrated into the organization to be effective, and it needs to be everyone towing the rope in the same direction. So I think that is something that's really going to continue. I think the CFOs are going to continue putting pressure on, what are the cost curves for net zero carbon assets? what's the return profile? How are we going to deploy our capital in the most efficient manner going forward to decarbonize our portfolios? I think companies and teams are really having a sharper focus on what's the cost to reduce 1 ton of carbon across different asset classes, different regions, on a per square foot basis. I think that's an important metric. Incorporating the price of carbon into, whether it's adjusted return metrics for net zero carbon projects, some form of green IR metric that considers the price of carbon and other risks. And then, the scope 3 issue, I think this is another elephant in the room. Obviously, a ton of detail, a ton of complexity. We're very early days for data. I think some categories are more important than others. And I think as an industry, we really do need to kind of step up and say, hey, listen, maybe we should try to focus on a few of these and come together and try to get some more alignment around what's important and areas that we should all focus on, rather than everyone trying to focus on all 15 categories in the GHG protocols. Number 2, physical risk for me, I think is a critical one. I think that conversation within organization is starting to intensify. Seems like every year is an unprecedented year from a physical risk perspective. Here in Canada, Jessica alluded to it. Really a heartbreaking summer in terms of the number of wildfires. I looked it up and I think I noticed 6,500 wildfires, 40 million acres of forest burned. That's about the size of New York State, and that's in Canada alone. So, these are significant. I think it is starting to turn people's attention to, what are we learning? What are we experiencing, and what do we need to do differently? We did a poll of our members. Almost 50% are experiencing operational impacts related to physical climate risk. A little less than that, more closer to 2/3, mapping it back to direct financial impacts and financial or physical risk. So I think this is really starting to hit the mark, and I think it's going to continue for our members and for the broader real estate industry. Third and final point is on reporting. I think the scrutiny and pressure, it's been documented very well, I think, in forums like this over the last couple of years, how the increased pressure from investors and regulators and tenants, I think that's going to continue. I think the playbook is to align with recognized standards, have genuine communications. I remember early days in GRESB, I think there was a term there that was talking about make sure you're doing more than you're saying. It was, saying and doing. And I still remember that. I think that's powerful, sage advice that stands the test of time.
I love it, Daryl. You're leaving me with a lot of imagery. The team sport and the notion that this room we're in has lots of elephants in it, like more than one. So, Jessica, you get the last word here. Talk to us about where you and their NAREIT membership see things going in 2024.
Yeah. I think that along the lines with Daryl, really an all-in approach to tackling the ESG issues that we're facing, taking a complete stakeholder view and considering all of the real estate adjacent, real estate aligned industry. So understanding scope 3 is really about understanding the cost of carbon within your supply chain. Understanding that if you have a commitment to decarbonize your buildings, there's a lot of your stakeholders that have to be a part of that as well. Partnerships with tenants, baking net zero into the lease, having performance-based leases, having performance-based contracts with your suppliers, so that everybody understands that what their role is in decarbonization of the building. And then I think also kind of going back to the financial realities, working with insurers and lenders to really understand how buildings are decarbonizing, what it's going to cost, what are the physical impacts of climate, how is the building owner and the local community really addressing that? Because I think we're all in the business of owning, buying, selling, lending, insuring on buildings, not doing those things. We want to continue a really a robust real estate investment market. And I think working together and to understand and to really bake that into the core business of real estate is where we're going to see things going in 2024.
Awesome. This is fantastic. So I want to thank you both for your perspectives. And I want to say that your members are very lucky to have you guiding them and interacting with them. And we're looking forward to working with you in 2024. And I know that we're going to move to our next segment, and we are excited to talk to Sarah Welton and have her give us an update on the GRESB Foundation.
Hello and happy Global Results Day. My name is Sarah Welton, and I am the director of the GRESB Foundation. I'm going to give you a short overview of our hot off the press, but low VOC Foundation 2024 roadmap. I'm also going to highlight some of the changes you can expect in the 2024 GRESB standards. I know it's hard to believe we get to have this much fun on a Tuesday. I'll start with the foundation. I had drinks with a dear friend the other day, and he's a fellow GRESB participant, and he said, "So who the heck is managing the GRESB Foundation?" Since he's a New Yorker, he used a little bit more colorful language than that, but I digress. His question made me think it may be helpful to give a brief overview of the foundation and how my team supports its governance of the standards. As a reminder, the GRESB Foundation is an independent, mission-based nonprofit organization dedicated to owning and evolving the GRESB standards. Its mission is to support effective communication between institutional investors and managers, empowering them with timely, relevant, and high-quality information to help drive sustainable improvements in the management and operations of real assets. The result is better, more valuable assets that benefit people and the environment. The foundation advances the standards through a hierarchy of advisory groups, including the foundation board, the real estate and infrastructure standards committees, and expert resource groups. These elected and active members spend countless hours reviewing and evaluating improvements to the standards, which are ultimately approved by the foundation board. Chris, Roxana, Charles, Joss, Eric, and I help ensure these critical volunteers are supported throughout the annual review process. You'll receive a link to the 2024 roadmap in a post-event email. In it, you can read more about the foundation's mission and vision, learn more about its near and longer-term priorities for the standards, and also find ways to engage with us. This year, changes to the 2024 real estate standards include defining validity periods and imposing an expiration for certifications, acknowledging that there's a diminishing return in how well the certification represents the sustainability of the building as time passes. Introducing scoring for net zero target setting, isolating EV charging station related energy from real asset operational energy consumption, introducing scoring for energy efficiency as a supplemental insight into operational performance of reported assets, introducing country-level benchmarking and scoring methodology, and providing additional insight into portfolio representativeness of intensity values in cases of incomplete data coverage by participants, allowing residential assets to report multiple energy ratings, and expanding the indicator scope to cover strategy around climate-related opportunities. It's also worth noting that there's ongoing research around the topics of embodied carbon, biodiversity, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and data quality. The full list of changes, again, will be shared in a post-event email. Finally, I want to close with a big thank you to the Foundation Board, the standards committees, the working groups, and expert resource groups. These volunteer members are the lifeblood of the foundation, and they ensure that the GRESB standards remain independent, mission-driven, investor-led, and reflective of the real asset industry and its members. I also want to thank you, our invaluable GRESB stakeholders. Your engagement is what makes the standards work. Your participation and support are what drive sustainable market transformation. Sincerely, thank you.
Thanks so much, Sarah, for the great update on the GRESB Foundation. It's now time to check in with the regions. I'm Dan Winters, Senior Director at GRESB, based in Washington, D.C., heavily involved in the Americas region. It's a tremendous pleasure to be joined by GRESB colleagues in the APAC and EMEA. Pooja Changani, based in Singapore. Pooja does an exceptional job working with all GRESB members in the APAC region. And Anna Olink, based in the GRESB headquarters in Amsterdam. Anna keeps the momentum going. Over 1,000 submissions from the EU to the 2023 benchmark, more than double since 2019. 2023 is an ESG growth story all around the world. GRESB benchmark participation up. Net zero targets up. Renewable energy generated up. Energy consumption is up. Whoa. We're back to the office. Office occupancy is up, and with that comes energy consumption. The good news, GHG emissions are down. GHG emissions are down globally. Within the benchmark, this is great news. Leading the way is Europe and Oceania, the strategy, renewable energy purchasing and deployment. But unfortunately, not everything up is good news. Climate damages are up. Global temperatures are up. Cost of capital is up. These last three cause concern for institutional investors. More work to do for sure. Momentum is on our side, and together we can get it done. Let's take a look at the 2023 numbers from the GRESB benchmark. 2,084 submissions came in, another new high, 14 straight years, record growth. 75 countries, 170,000 assets, $7.2 trillion of global asset value. Big numbers in the benchmark this year. Let's find out what's up around the world. Pooja, let's start with you. Welcome. How are you?
Very well, Dan. Thank you for that. This year, the growth in the APAC market has been particularly strong, with Oceania taking the lead and standing out as the fastest growing region globally, recording an increase of 23% in participation with a total of 143 entities. They are number one and they continue to lead. For Asia, we have seen another significant growth with a total of 340 entities for the region, where the overall participation has grown by 18%, representing an increase of 52 entities. Our fastest growing market in the Asian region has been Taiwan, albeit from a smaller base of one entity in 2022 to 10 entities this year in 2023. This has been driven by a push from the regulatory environment from the Taiwan Stock Exchange and Taipei Stock Exchange, which required all listed companies to submit sustainability reports. It's also driven by the National Development Council, the NDC, in publishing Taiwan's pathways to net zero emissions by 2050. Additionally, the Green Finance Action Plan 3.0 announced with the SFC has helped contribute towards this. This year, we've seen another strong growth from the Indian market with a strengthened regulatory environment focusing on mandatory reporting from the SEBI on the top 1,000 publicly listed companies for the BRSR. Additionally, investors have also been requesting for greater transparency around the impacts of risk on capital and operational and business performance, driven alongside peer pressure that we witness across the different markets in the Asian region as well. In India specifically, we've seen a growth by 35% from 23 entities in 2022 to 31 entities in 2023. Lastly, we've seen a significant amount of growth from the Korean region from 9 to 16 entities this year. Other notable mentions also include our stable markets such as Hong Kong, Singapore, and Japan that have grown by 20% and 10% respectively.
Pooja, that's an amazing report. Thank you for that. Keep up the great work in the APAC region. Let's turn to Anna Olink in EMEA. Anna, how are things? What's up there?
Thank you, Dan. So Europe has led the pack with the highest number of participants, rising from 907 to 1,013 in 2023. In the whole EMEA region, we welcome nearly 100 new logo participants this year, which I think is great, as our real estate companies here are going through some hard times with raising cost of capitals and increased ESG regulatory requirements. So while our participants are figuring out if they are subject to SFDR, SDR, CSRD, and how the EU taxonomy is going to impact their business, they remain committed to the annual ESG GRESB assessments, and that's tremendous news for us. When it comes to the number of participants per country, the pan-European and the UK-based portfolios have registered the strongest growth yet again. Germany continues to be the second strongest market in Europe after the UK in terms of the number of portfolios reported to GRESB. We also see a strong growth in the participation in Italy, Switzerland, and Sweden. And we are also happy to welcome our first participants from Egypt and from Serbia this year. We are hoping for more companies in the MENA region and the CEE region to join us in the coming years. Perhaps one more comment when it comes to the GRESB participation per sector. The diversified portfolios continue to lead the way when it comes to the overall number of portfolios reported to us in Europe. However, residential portfolios were a solid number 2, ahead of the office portfolios that closed the podium. And I'm really curious how the ranking is going to evolve in the coming years.
Excellent report. Thank you. In Americas, the report's pretty simple. Big jump in numbers, 550 submissions in 2023. A lot of money, 3.2 trillion in gross asset value. Canada's notable. They're coming on strong. 74 members of the benchmark in 2023. That's triple from 2019. Mexico and Brazil also emerging in 2023, 17 and 14 respectively. Strong growth there. We're seeing megawatts of renewable energy, 9.5 million megawatts. Big uptick in 2023 in America, more to come. Okay, let's take a look at the next slide. The difference between 2019 and 2023, big push up and to the right. So the normal scatter plot in 2019, in 2023, the longtime GRESB members continued to refine and advance their programs, pushing into the upper right. We've got new firms coming in, typically on the lower left. So that clustering up there, but Oceania, look at the color in the upper right. They are strong. They are the leaders without a doubt. Canada's close at number 2, and all of this really emanates from EMEA. So let's take a look at the next slide. We can talk about cohorts. Cohorts, very interesting. So if you've been in the GRESB benchmark for 10 years or longer, you've got a score that's pretty strong. If you're coming in now, it's typically a lower circumstance. That's okay. It's all about benchmarking and improvement. First year is a struggle to wrap your arms around data, to hunt for structured non-financial data and put together a program. Year number 2, start to accelerate. Year number 3, you're part of that benchmark in that upper right. Let me just stop there for a second and see if that's the same dynamic that happens in EMEA and APAC. Anna, do you have any comments on this slide?
I agree with you, Dan. It's always, every year we see the same. You start low, which is great because it's all about the journey. And then the biggest progress tends to happen between year number 1 and year 2. And then we continue into year 3 with good score, with pretty high scores.
Pooja, same story?
Same story in APAC. I fully echo with what Anna and yourself mentioned. The biggest jump is always between year 1 and year 2. As clients become more sophisticated with data collection and more familiar with GRESB, they tend to drive towards a higher score.
If you look between the numbers, the story inside the numbers, the rise of the opportunity funds and value add funds. 448 are in the 2023 benchmark with an average score of 70. In Americas, 148 value add funds, slightly below that number, right? Moving up the score chart. Many 5-star GRESB value add and opportunity funds in the American region. Harrison Street, Beacon Capital, UBS Asset Management, Greystar, Savannah, Rockefeller Group, GTIS Partners, Rock Hill, and CBRE Investors. All value add and opportunity funds achieving a 5-star. This is tremendous news. Long list. Let's look at the next slide. Net zero, the topic of the year. Anna, can we start with you? We're seeing the most progress happening in the EMEA region. What's the story?
Right. In Europe, 77% of real estate participants have net zero policy in place in 2023. 62% of our participants have made a public net zero commitment, and 58% have established a net zero target. So you're right, the numbers seem really strong, especially when compared to last year's.
Pooja, net zero in Asia.
Yeah, we're seeing very strong numbers, especially in the Oceania region. Again, we see 93% of participant members in Oceania who have a net zero policy, with Asia rising at 78%. 42% of them have established net zero targets in Asia, so that's a little bit on the lower side. However, in Oceania, we still see that at the higher end of 80% who've actually established these net zero targets.
In Americas, the leadership is coming from Canada. What's going on there? Decarbonization, electrification, and on-site renewables. What's the difference? They have a price on carbon, $65 a ton in 2023, and a schedule to increase $15 a ton year on year on year to 2030, $170 a ton. You can target, you can set net zero goals. Every asset manager in Canada who's part of the GRESB benchmark is on notice. Net zero decarbonization plan, building by building by building by the year end 2024. That's what's happening here in Americas. Watch for the ripple effects as the Canadian pension plans are the top foreign investors in United States real estate. Okay, so let's take a wrap. Final comments here. Some comments on the GRESB benchmark evolution. Many new 2023 members are smaller firms, local operating partners, real estate developers, emerging fund managers. Net zero requires alignment. All capital market participants. Early evidence shows that this alignment is happening. We got to pick up the pace. Together, we can move the market. Over 2,000 GRESB member organizations are leading these efforts, and based upon past track record, I think we can do it. Keep up the great work, everyone.
Thanks, Dan. It's inspiring to see the continued progress of the global real estate industry. We also know that we need to do even more. Next, we're going to explore examples of innovation in action from leading GRESB participants.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kaiser Pervez. I am the CEO for Nucleus Office Parks in India. At Nucleus Office Parks, we're committed to leading the way in sustainability. And we're doing this in a couple of ways. Using GRESB ratings to benchmark our sustainability efforts allows us to constantly measure ourselves with the world and the global standards. There's a very strong emphasis on resource efficiency, and our entire operational portfolio is evaluated under the LEED EBOM scale. And that is one of the testament of how we are pushing for continuous improvement in everything which we do. We're aiming for carbon neutrality. The fact that 78% of our power is sourced through renewable energy is a very proud moment for us. We employ a comprehensive waste management program, which has enabled us to ensure that there is a 94% waste diversion from the landfills. We are also focusing a lot on wellness of the occupiers and the indoor environments of our building. Increasingly, we have seen that this has become a forefront for a lot of our occupiers and users of the building, and that has made us to be the world's largest well-rated, performance-rated portfolio in the world, and we are very happy about it. And last but not the least is to ensure of how we are ensuring inclusivity within our diverse workforce. We are trying to make efforts to employ differently abled individuals within our operating teams. Based on our industry trends and our experience, what we have started seeing and what we do see was really the difference between green premium and brown discounts. A couple of years back, we did not see green premiums and brown discounts as such an emphatic movement, but undeniably in the last 1 year, there is a huge wave of commitment on making sure that there is sustainability in each and every conversation. We have started getting asked and questioned by our occupiers on our net zero emission plans. Increasingly, our occupiers are rising to the fact that 30% of the global carbon emissions come from the building, and they would like to join the movement one way or the other. Second is the efficient waste management is rising to the forefront, given the mounting global waste challenges. Last but not the least, I think the pandemic has changed how the indoor platforms and the indoor environment has become at the forefront for not just the owners of the building, but also for the occupiers of the building. And our alignment to occupational safety and our alignment to wellness is just a re-emphasis of how indoor environments are important for the occupiers as well as for owners just like us.
My name is Kit Milnes, and I'm the Vice President of Sustainability and Resilience at KingSett Capital. At KingSett, we've taken a very strong stance with decarbonization. We understand where the world needs to get to by 2050, but we want to take measured, concise, verifiable steps along the way in order to make sure that we are responsible with our investor money and we're taking actions that are going to yield real results. In order to do this, we've adopted the Science-Based Target Initiative methodology to understand where we need to get our portfolios and by what time in order to be in compliance with the Paris Climate Agreement. That has given us a target of 67% reduction by 2035 for our core fund. Now, we're doing this by executing decarbonization strategies at the property level. In order for us to understand all the ins and outs and metrics that go into this to make sure that we're spending the right investor dollars in the right spot, we created our own customized building decarbonization modeling tool. This tool helps us understand and evaluate all the major metrics and impacts that would come in and out of decarbonizing large commercial assets like office, retail, multi-res, and determining at what point in the building's next 15, 20 years is the right time to start executing a decarbonization strategy. We also have new developments that we pursue to ensure that we're bringing on no net new carbon for our developments. This means ensuring that the operation systems that we're putting into those buildings will be operating at a net zero carbon basis, and that we're taking a very focused look on embodied carbon, reducing where we can and offsetting the remainder. We think it's important for everyone to be able to understand where KingSett is in this race to decarbonize, what tools we're using, and sharing that so others can gain on the success that we've had and improve what we've created so that others can benefit as well. For that reason, our building decarbonization modeling tool has been released to the market on KingSett's website for free for anyone to download. You get to understand the inputs and outputs that we're looking at and running sensitivity analysis on, as well as the dashboards, graphs, and outlays that have got us the buy-in from our asset managers to our investors, C-suite, and external financiers like the Canadian Infrastructure Bank. Without external financing assistance, all of this would be made much harder. So I highly recommend any and all of you to understand what programs exist in your markets so that you can help, so that you can get some assistance and help on executing these very complex strategies at the asset level. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Lilia Kuzmina here from East9. When I was offered 2 minutes to address this audience, I really wondered what I could possibly say here that would be of interest to the GRESB community. And then I thought about myself 5 years ago and decided to send a word of encouragement to new members among small and medium-sized companies who might feel daily frustration about lack of resources and look with awe and admiration at the big guys and girls of the industry with thousands of properties and dedicated sustainability departments. Now and then we all ask ourselves a question, how in the world what we do in our 10 or 20 properties can possibly have any significance compared to the impact of the big players. And when we think that leadership and innovation is safe for those with multiple billion-dollar business, I don't think we are following the right path all the time. I actually think that now I think that size is not always a prerequisite for making an impact and being a leader. We are a relatively small company by the industry standards, but we have a strong voice in our markets in the Baltics. East9 is not exceptionally tech-savvy company, but we share the belief in the power of tech for green solutions. Operating from Lithuania, which is a hub for fintech, we asked ourselves at some point why the same success has not yet been replicated for prop tech. So backed by this vision, we organized events like East9 Prop Tech Acceleration Camp, bringing together key players from the industry, startup community, government, and educators. So somehow we got this ball rolling, and in doing this, I believe we contributed to something that can potentially have a bigger impact than what we could achieve only within the scope of our operations. And think about what we all do every day when we engage with our suppliers, collecting, for example, material emission data. Every inquiry from our side generates multiple inquiries down the value chain, introducing more and more people to the sustainability concepts, creating cumulative impact very often beyond our reach. So my point is, in the moment of existential anxiety that all of us have now and then, let's remind ourselves about the ripple effect that we create every day by going after our vision. Our impact is not limited to the scope of our operations or the size of our business, but can go beyond these boundaries through our ability to touch and move others with our vision and determination. So I think leadership in action is about this daily commitments. So good luck, and may the force be with you.
We've clearly heard that sustainability has never been more important. And as part of this, we know there is no way to achieve Paris goals without full engagement of the building sector. We also know that there has never been more scrutiny on our claims and aspirations, as well as there's never been more potential for real estate to deliver real-world benefits for people in the environment. We know that the job isn't done. We know that despite a decade of work, we're just getting started. This is reflected in the fact that the journey to 2024 has already started. GRESB participants around the world are reflecting on their performance, learning from their peers, and raising the bar for the year ahead. We appreciate you joining us for this global event. We hope to see you in person soon, and you can learn more about regional insight events on GRESB.com. Thanks for your time.